wants to be great. Everyone says they want to rise to the top, to lead the field, to be the best. But most people never do. Not because they're not capable, but because they never fully commit to what greatness requires. They want the recognition, but not the responsibility. They want the results, but not the repetition. They want the title, but not the training. And so they stay stuck in the middle. Decent, average, replaceable. Becoming the best in anything is not about talent. It's about obsession. It's about consistency. It's about building habits so strong that even on your worst day, you're still outperforming most people on their best. It's about discipline that makes no excuses. Standards that never lower. Systems that remove the option to fall off. And belief that does not negotiate with circumstance. The best are not made in sprints. They're made in the silence, in the mornings when no one is watching, in the decisions no one celebrates, in the hours when it would be easy to quit. Greatness is not built when you're in the mood. It's built when you're not. It's forged in friction, reinforced in resistance, solidified through sacrifice. There are patterns to excellence, predictable, repeatable principles that separate the few from the many. And once you understand those principles, once you install those habits, once you anchor your identity to something unshakable, there is no limit to what you can do. The only limit is how much you're willing to give. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a better plan. You need a set of rules to live by, a set of principles that govern your daily actions, no matter how you feel. Because the person who is the best didn't get there by accident. They got there by choice. And they made that choice every day. Let's get right down to it. Because time is precious. And what's precious is usually limited. The first way to become the best at just about anything is to build your foundation in silence. The best in anything don't start loud. They start unknown. They build in the shadows, in the early mornings and late nights when no one sees them. They're not waiting for recognition. They're not performing for attention. They're too busy doing the work. Because the beginning isn't about applause. It's about identity. You don't need fans. You need discipline. If you only train when people are watching, you'll never build the habits that last. If you only work when it's convenient, you'll never be consistent enough to separate yourself. You have to become addicted to progress no one claps for. You have to fall in love with the days that feel invisible, because that's when real momentum is built. The ones who become the best aren't motivated by recognition. They're motivated by vision. They know who they're becoming, and they don't need anyone to validate that path. They don't need encouragement to keep going. Their work is the encouragement. Their discipline airs the motivation. Their progress is their reward. Most people never make it out of the silent phase. They get bored. They get discouraged. They think because no one is noticing, nothing is happening. But growth doesn't care about visibility. Excellence doesn't need applause to exist. Mastery doesn't happen in front of crowds. It happens in solitude, in repetition, in the same decision made over and over and over again until it becomes your default. You want to be the best? Start working like you already are. Start training like it's already yours. Start showing up like you're already leading the field. Because the standard you train with when no one's watching is the same standard that will carry you when the pressure is on. If you can't build in silence, you won't last in the spotlight. If you can't stay consistent when it's hard, you won't survive when it gets harder. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. And if your preparation is built on discipline instead of emotion, you'll never fall below greatness. You have to become the kind of person who doesn't need reminders, who doesn't need motivation, who doesn't need a push. You just move. You just work. You just do what needs to be done. Not because it's exciting, but because it's who you are. Because excellence isn't something you chase. It's something you become. Stop waiting for people to see you. Start building something that's undeniable. Stop hoping the world will believe in you. Start acting like your work speaks louder than your words. Stop measuring your worth by attention. Start measuring it by alignment. Because when your daily actions reflect the person you're trying to become, the world won't be able to ignore you. Okay. The second way to become the best is to obsess over your fundamentals. Mastery isn't found in the fancy. It's not built in the complicated. It's born in the basics, in the simple things done with ruthless consistency, over and over, long after most people have moved on, long after it stopped being exciting, long after it became boring. You see, that's where the best are hanging out. Everyone wants to skip steps. Everyone wants the next level. Everyone's chasing strategy. But the ones who dominate, the ones who lead, who last, who become undeniable, they are obsessed with the simple things. They're not above the basics, they're built on them. You don't rise by doing extraordinary things once in a while. You rise by doing ordinary things at an extraordinary level. Every single day. You sharpen your skills until they're automatic. You drill the same pattern until your body doesn't hesitate. You don't just know what to do, you become it. Most people get stuck not because they're untalented, but because they get bored. They abandon the process that got them here. They look for shortcuts. They want novelty. They start experimenting instead of refining. They start winging it instead of executing with precision. But the best? They don't need variety to stay locked in. They need mastery. They need the same reps, the same sets, the same notes, the same drills, until they feel them in their bones, until they become instinct, until there's no hesitation, until their floor is higher than most people's ceiling. If you want to be the best, stop looking for something new. Look deeper into what you already know. Study your craft like it's sacred. Break it down, rebuild it, refine it. Study your movements. Study your decisions. Study your rhythm. Track the details. Obsess over the edge. Because excellence lives in the details. There's no such thing as too good for the basics. When it starts feeling easy, you don't move on. You go harder. You go deeper. You push the tempo. You push the precision. You push the intensity. You don't just check the box. You squeeze every drop out of the process. The best don't practice until they get it right. They practice until they can't get it wrong. Until execution becomes reflex. Until confidence is built on hours of proof, not moments of hype. Until their foundation is so strong that nothing can shake it. Not stress, not fatigue, not pressure. You can't skip your way to the top. And even if you could, you wouldn't stay there. The people who skip steps always get exposed. When things get real, when the pace increases, when the pressure hits, they break. Because their base was weak. Because they built speed before skill, flash before foundation. But if your base is solid, if your fundamentals are locked, if your habits are unshakable, you don't break. You don't panic. You don't hesitate. You just execute. And you execute better than anyone else. Not because you're more talented, but because you're more prepared. Next, The third way is simple, and it's to become unreasonably consistent. Not occasionally consistent, not when it's easy, consistent. Not when I feel motivated, consistent. Unreasonably consistent. So consistent that people start asking how you keep showing up. So consistent that your habits are no longer tied to your mood. So consistent that discipline becomes part of your personality. Because the truth is, talent will fail, emotion will fade, motivation will vanish, but consistency will keep going. Consistency will carry you through the valleys. Consistency will protect your progress when life tries to knock you off course. Most people are committed when they feel like it. They follow through when it's convenient. They train hard for a few weeks, and then disappear for a few more. They journal for 2 days, then stop. They go all in for a weekend, then burn out. They start strong, but they don't last. That's not how greatness works. You don't become elite by showing up when it's sunny. You become elite by showing up in the rain, in the dark, on the days when everything in you wants to stop, on the days when no one would blame you if you skipped. That's where the separation is created. The ones who become the best aren't the ones who had the most natural ability. They're the ones who made a decision. The decision that said, no matter what, I show up. No matter how I feel, I execute. No matter the conditions, I perform. That decision, when repeated daily, becomes identity. And identity is where all your results come from. You don't need more intensity. You need more frequency. You don't need to sprint for 3 hours once a week. You need to show up for 30 minutes every day. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. You need to keep the chain going. You need to show yourself over and over again that you're someone who doesn't stop. Even if the session is short, even if the work is ugly, even if you're tired, even if it feels like you're not making progress, you still show up. Because that's what pros do. That's what leaders do. That's what the best do. Consistency is the great amplifier. It multiplies everything. Effort, intention, focus. You might not notice it day to day, but over weeks, over months, over years, it compounds. And it creates a gap that no one can cross unless they've lived with the same level of discipline. You won't see immediate results. That's why most people quit. They think their habits aren't working because they can't see what's being built. But something is being built. Every time you follow through, you're casting votes. You're stacking proof. You're reinforcing the identity of someone who keeps their word. Eventually, your baseline becomes better than most people's best, because you've repeated it so many times. You've made it so automatic, so ingrained, that even on your worst day, you're still in motion, still growing, still building. That's the level you need to live at. Not because you'll feel like it every day, but because your goals deserve consistency more than your comfort deserves a break. Your vision deserves habits more than your feelings deserve a pass. Next, the fourth way to become the best at anything you want. Embrace obsession. The best don't dapple. They don't kind of want it. They're not interested. They're all in, fully, deeply, unapologetically. They're not balanced. They're obsessed. And that's what it takes. Because becoming the best in anything requires an unreasonable level of commitment. A level most people won't understand. A level that looks extreme to people who are used to average. Obsession is not a flaw. It's a force. It pulls you through resistance. It keeps you locked in when others drift. It eliminates the need for motivation because you're consumed by the mission. You're not trying to squeeze it in. You're building your life around it. People will tell you to slow down, to be realistic, to take a break, and if you listen, You'll end up just like them, burnout, uninspired, going through the motions. But if you want to lead, if you want to dominate, if you want to be the best, you don't listen to average advice. You don't lower your intensity so others can feel comfortable. You raise your standard. You raise your volume. You raise your obsession, and you live there. Not for a week. Not until the results show up. You live there as long as it takes. As long as it requires. Until your vision is so real to you that you can't shut it off. You wake up thinking about it. You go to sleep planning for it. You breathe it. You become it. You stop doing the bare minimum. You stop hoping things work out. You start doing the extra reps. Staying the extra hour. Asking the extra questions. Reviewing the extra footage. Rereading the same material. Breaking it down. Building it back. Not because someone told you to, but because you cannot. Obsession isn't about being perfect. It's about being possessed by the outcome. Being relentlessly pulled by your potential. Being unwilling to accept anything less than the highest level. Not because of pressure, but because of principle. Because deep down, you know you were built for more. And now you're acting like it. Most people live distracted, scattered, split between 100 little interests. They never go deep on anything. They never commit long enough to break through. They never push past the boredom, the repetition, the hard part. So they stay surface level, and they wonder why nothing sticks. But obsession solves that. Obsession removes the noise. It simplifies your life. You stop needing to say yes to everything. You stop needing to be everywhere. You focus. You cut. You streamline. Because when something becomes your priority, everything else becomes optional. And it's not about working 20 hours a day. It's about living with alignment. It's about eliminating everything that doesn't serve the mission. It's about creating a life that reflects your vision, not just in theory, but in structure, in behavior, in habits, in intensity. You want to be great? Get obsessed. Forget balance. Find alignment. Build a schedule around your craft. Protect your time like it's sacred. Say no to things that dilute your edge. Surround yourself with people who challenge your focus, not your hunger. And when people call you intense, thank them. When they say you're obsessed, agree with them. Because the ones who change the world, who lead the field, who redefine what's possible, they're never casual. They're never lukewarm. They're never sort of committed.
They're all in.
Fully in. Unapologetically in. Not for the spotlight, but for the standard. Not for the applause, but for the purpose. Not for the image, but for the identity. And that identity is forged through obsession. Okay, here's the fifth way. Detach from the outcome and marry the process. Most people fail because they obsess over results and ignore the system. They want the outcome, but they resist the repetition. They measure every day, every effort, every step by whether or not it produced a visible win. And if it doesn't, they get discouraged. They question the process. They pull back. They look for something easier. That's why they never get momentum. Because momentum is built in the days that feel invisible. It's built in the reps that feel small. It's built in the discipline that looks like it's doing nothing. But it is. It's compounding. Quietly, slowly, powerfully. You see how that works? You don't become the best by chasing results. You become the best by mastering your craft. By showing up no matter what. By focusing on what you can control. You can't control how fast the results show up. You can't control how people respond. But you can control your inputs, your intensity, your execution. Detach from the outcome. Stop staring at the scoreboard. Stop checking your numbers every day. Stop analyzing your performance for validation. Start focusing on the process, on the ritual, on the routine. Build a system that works regardless of emotion, regardless of conditions, regardless of how you feel. Because when you build the right system, results are automatic. They don't need to be chased. They're a byproduct. They're the natural outcome of doing the right thing with relentless consistency. But that consistency only shows up when you stop making the result your idol and start making your habits your anchor. Fall in love with the repetition, with the reps that no one sees, with the hours when the work feels thankless, with the structure that looks boring from the outside, sharpens you on the inside. That's where the separation is made. That's where the best are built. Anyone can be excited about the goal. Anyone can show up when the results are fast. But can you show up when there's no applause? Can you keep going when no one notices? Can you put in the work when the scale doesn't move? The progress isn't visible, and the feedback is silent, because that's what it takes. You're not here to be excited. You're here to be excellent. And excellence is not found in hype. It's found in rhythm, in repetition, in showing up the same way on day 1000 as you did on day 1. Not because it feels good, but because it's who you are now. Your identity isn't built by results. It's built by routine. And when your routine is non-negotiable, your confidence becomes unshakable. You don't need external validation because you've already cast the vote. You've already proven who you are, one disciplined decision at a time. And that's the irony. When you stop needing results to feel worthy, they show up faster. When you stop attaching your worth to speed, you start moving smoother. When you stop obsessing over the finish line, you start running with more clarity, because now your joy is found in the work, in the process, in the commitment. Detach from the outcome. Marry the process. Stay in the work, even when it feels like nothing is happening, because something always is. Inside you, around you, through you. Keep building, keep moving, keep sharpening, and trust that the result will take care of itself. Next, the 6th way is a big one, and if you live by it, you'll be successful beyond belief. Here it is. Seek pressure. Most people avoid it. They dodge it. They run from anything that feels heavy. They want progress without friction. They want strength without resistance. They want success without discomfort. But pressure is not your enemy. It's your training ground. It's the only environment where growth becomes non-negotiable. You don't get better by coasting. You don't improve by being comfortable. You don't stretch your capacity when everything is easy. You stretch it when the weight is heavy, when the demand is higher than your current ability, when the task feels bigger than your confidence. That's where evolution happens. That's where identity is forged. Pressure exposes the gaps. It shows you where you're soft. It shows you what breaks when the tempo increases. It reveals the cracks in your foundation. And that's a gift, because now you can fix it. Now you can reinforce it. Now you know exactly where to focus your effort. The ones who become the best don't avoid pressure. They pursue it. They put themselves in situations where average won't cut it, where mediocrity is exposed, where their best is required. They don't fear the weight. They chase it, because they know the weight is what sharpens them. The pressure is what polishes them. You want to become elite? Get under some weight. Set a pace that demands your full attention. Put yourself in rooms where you're not the best. Take on challenges that make you doubt yourself at first, because that doubt, that tension, that stress, that's the sign that you're growing. That's the signal that you're no longer coasting.